Top chief executives earn an average of $4.75 million. That's 78 times more than the average worker. The stark finding comes from a report released today that examined the remuneration of executives at Australia's 100 biggest public companies. The findings also reveal a $1 million pay gap between male and female CEOs. For more, we're joined by Perth author of that report, corporate advisor Conrad Liveris. Conrad, welcome. So these numbers won't endear the top end of town to the rest of Australia's workers.
Yeah, there is quite a stark gap, and it's really the big finding for me was that there is such a gap when it comes to growth in this sort of remuneration. The average worker has seen wage growth of about 1.9% over the past year, and chief executives in particular are seeing their remuneration packages grow by 3.5%. That's a really distinct gap, and it really plays into the inequality conversation that's going on at the moment.
And the highest paid CEO is Alan Joyce from Qantas. How much does he get, and how does he and other executives justify what they get?
Yeah, so he gets just over he took home just over $24 million as part of his salary and all of his bonuses as well. And that's been a long time coming. He's been working really hard on the company. But even still, with all of that effort, irrespective of how great the turnaround of Qantas has been, that's really hard to justify. It's completely out of line with community expectations, not just him, but the entire remuneration process overall. And so the justification by executives is always that they don't set their own pay. The reality of the situation is that no one's forcing them to take all this money. The main reason why executive remuneration averages as a total package for the 500 executives that over 500 executives that I assessed, it comes to $2.4 million, is because of their starting salaries. Comes with an average salary in this past year of $800,000. So that's their weekly take-home sort of pay throughout the year. That's pretty extensive. So, you know, that's the thing that's causing a lot of the issues, because bonuses and incentives are based off their salary. That's the concern.
Now, you mentioned inequality. What about female CEOs? They typically get less than their male counterparts, but didn't you find that often female executives earn more than their male CEOs? Is that right?
In a couple of cases, yeah. Women who run business units for these companies can do really well. It shows that they're performing at a really extraordinary rate. The reality is that when female chief executives are being paid so significantly less than the overall average of chief executives, it's because there is a real big focus that comes on these women. Because there's only 5 in this top 100 companies that are women, you know, they get a lot of attention in the media, but also investors focus on those companies. It means that there's a greater scrutiny. That's what's causing a lot of the friction there. So the reason why female executives just broadly tend to do really well is because they can escape that sort of attention. Their male CEOs get caught up in all of this. Qantas, Macquarie are great examples of that.
Hasn't there been more scrutiny about this from both boards and also from shareholders? Hasn't that pressure made any difference?
Look, there is a growing conversation around boardrooms and, you know, by investors. The reality is that it's actually just sitting at that conversation level. It's barely moving to action. There are some votes going on at annual general meetings of these large companies driven by shareholders. But the reality of the situation is that it's actually not reducing the pay. It's not causing, and the growth is so different still. You know, the 1.9% for average workers and 3.5% for CEOs. That's a really big difference. So we're not actually seeing that much change go on, except for that people are getting outraged. And this is the reason why I did this, is because there is so much confusion. The remuneration reports that companies release, they're very confusing. They're quite extensive. They can be up to 50 to 100 pages long. No one has great interest in reading that unless they have to. And so this sort of information becomes really important in that sort of sense. if shareholders, and we all are them in these large companies through our superannuation, if you're not happy with this, that's when you've actually got to start writing to your super funds or to the companies that you directly invest in. That's what this is all about.
Okay, so you've done this work. What do you want to see happening now?
Well, the reality is that companies only reduce their remuneration for their executives when they bring on someone new. And so what we've actually got to do is, over the next year, for the next remuneration season, one of the things I'll be talking with companies about is actually better aligning both wage growth for, executives with their average worker. That becomes really important. But also, they've actually got to start taking accountability for this sort of inequality conversation. This isn't something that exists in the ether. This is something that they have direct control over. Wages and jobs are a really big focus at the moment because there are a lot of people who are facing instability. And this comes from, these really large businesses as well. Effectively, companies need to start refreshing their remuneration practices. And, we're using stale processes and, that's what I really want to start here.
Conrad Liveris, thank you.
Thanks.